There it is. It was hidden.
All right.
There we go.
Awesome. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We've hit the top of the hour. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the next version of the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions. This is for January 2022. And so, as many of you know, we've had a lot of really interesting weather over the past month since our last webinar. So I know that Chip Zimmer from the Kentucky Division of Water is going to have a really great presentation for us. And myself, Megan Shargaradsky, and Matt Dixon from the UK Ag Weather Center will both be on for the Q&A at the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Chip so he can get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a really nice snowy day. It's our first statewide snowstorm of the season. I know here in Georgetown, we have about 3 inches of snow already. So it's coming down pretty good. So just to get started, because we do have a lot to cover today, just the general information that we have every month about this being presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University, in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System and in coordination of the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. We're going to have another webinar, as always, on the first Thursday of the month. So that'll be February 3rd. And you can also watch this webinar live stream on the Kentucky Climate Center YouTube, or you can go back and watch it some other time, and it will be available to watch on the YouTube channel. And what you're looking at right here is the Caldwell County Mesonet station, which took a direct hit from the tornado, and it did not do so well, but we'll talk about that here a little bit later. So just a quick outline. We are going to talk about recent conditions, and then we're going to go back and talk briefly about 2021, like the whole year in review, and also then talk about impacts, which we had a lot of them this year or this month, and wrap it up with the outlooks. So, and we have here 2 pictures from January 3rd. The first one is the Wayne County Mesonet, where Southern Kentucky did have a little bit of it had some snow on the 2nd, while the rest, after that big rain on January 1st. And Butler County Mesonet, you can see the flooded field as a result of all the heavy rain we had on New Year's Day. So get started. This is the 7-day radar estimate for precipitation. And you can see that it was pretty wet past 7 days for everybody. Looks like the lightest parts were up by Cincinnati, where they still had 1.3 inches. But you see a heavy band where they had some just training thunderstorms and really heavy storms running there across Southern Kentucky. That's where a lot of the severe weather was on New Year's Day as well. Go out to 30 days. Again, the past 30 days have been pretty wet. A lot of that, not just from that event, but we've had several events through the month of December that brought us some rains. You can see it again, that heavy band where we had that New Year's Day storm. Also see that band a little bit further north, and that is the one of these supercells that came from the big tornado event, running from Graves County all the way up towards Shelby County there. But overall, we've had some pretty decent rains over the past month. We jumped that out to 60 days, and again, you can see there's a pretty big band of some pretty good precipitation running all the way from Western Kentucky through central and into Eastern Kentucky. 8, 9, 10 inches, even 11 inches of precipitation the past 2 months. A little drier along in Southern Kentucky and up towards the Northern Kentucky area, but still 6, 7 inches of rain. So it hasn't necessarily been dry, just not quite as the excessive rain that other places have gotten. And again, go out to 90 days, pretty broad. You see pretty much everybody's in that same color. That I guess that's a tan. We'll call it tan. That 10 to 15 inch range. So pretty much a general area there. A few places, Lawrence County, Johnson County, that are 8 inches, but that's about it. So just looking at the percent of normal here for this 3-time series, the 30, 60, 90 days, and you can see pretty much everybody's well above normal in the 30-day time frame. When we get to 60 days, we did have a dry November, and so that's still kind of showing up kind of residual dryness from in the 60 and 90 days. So you can see kind of that in southern Kentucky, a little below normal precipitation, but obviously not dry down there, especially with all the rain we've had the past 30 days, and just a little bit of a dry hangover from that dry November. Overall, on average, the state averaged 4.51 inches of rain in December, which is just a tad above normal, 0.08 inches or so. So that's about as close as normal you're going to see for a month. But again, we had that big rain that's not on in that was on January 1st. So we started off 2022 above normal for the year, and has some flash flood warnings. We have river flood warnings. So it's been a lot of issues with flooding, among other things. So we look at temperatures for the month of December. It was warm. It was very, very warm. On average, December was 47.1 degrees, which is about 9 degrees above normal. And then it was the second warmest December on record. Back in 2015, it was over 1.5 degrees warmer on average than this year. And this year, we're still, I believe it was still at least 1 degree above the third place year. So, I mean, just another, it's a 2015 and this year, just way above the rest of the years. But you can see, looking at this map, there were places out in Western Kentucky, we're talking 14 degrees above normal, which is just amazing. I know at my house, I have a hydrangea plant that actually started budding and leafing out. I just noticed that this week. So that's how warm it got. That I've heard of daffodils and tulips coming up prematurely. So it's definitely going to be causing at least some damage with for horticulture. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that next month when we kind of have a better idea of what happened. And I just want to apologize if you guys hear dogs barking at some point during this. We've had a lot of sirens today and they like to howl. So I just noticed one up by the door. So just want to let that out there, and I apologize if that happens. So continuing on, we have the U.S. Drought Monitor. You can see Kentucky is clear of any drought, and really the whole Ohio Valley is clear drought. But you can see that's kind of the exception, as there is a lot of drought still in the country. The western 2/3 of the U.S. having plenty of drought. We have seen there's been some improvement out in California in the Pacific Northwest with all the rain they've had out there, but there's still, they still have need a lot more to catch up. And you can also see over the mid-Atlantic, Carolinas, Virginia, some D0 and some drought. That's probably about the closest drought that we have to us. Like I said, for Kentucky, we're drought free and probably will remain that way for some time. And if you look at the change map from 4 weeks ago, you can see there's been a lot of improvement around Kentucky, Georgia, into the Carolinas. There's been improvement as well as over in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Missouri. So part of the country, we've had some improvement. And like I said, you can see out west, there's been a lot of improvement. The deep south, Texas, Louisiana, up into Oklahoma and Kansas, that's where there's been some degradation with a dry fall. All right, so soil moisture. The map on the left is from December 31st, so it does not include all that rain that we got on New Year's Day. So you can see there's a couple little orange spots in there depicting dryness. I'm sure that is not the case anymore. And if you look at the GRACE, which shows the groundwater levels, you can see we're normal to above normal, depending on where you are. So we're looking good from that standpoint. Looking at the mesonet gauges, I pulled out Henderson County and Clark County gauges, and you can see the soil moisture respond to the January 1st event, and then go back down the field capacity. So that's about how much water the soil can normally hold. And so we are looking good. We are staying at field capacity, which is what we'd like to see this time of year. Stream flows. Stream flows over the past 7 days are pretty much above normal across the board. You can see several black dots there, which depict flows that are above the 98th percentile. So those are extremely high. Just one orange dot down there. That's the Poor Fork of the Cumberland River. I'm not sure what's going on down there. My guess is that's probably not a real number. There's probably an issue with the gauge down there. And same thing going out the 28-day average stream flows. Again, lots of normal to above normal stream flows. So again, looking good for stream flows. Maybe they're a little too high, in fact. Current flooding. We do have some current flooding, especially out in the lower Green River Basin. Out there in Muhlenberg, Butler, McLean counties, there's minor flooding and even one gauge in moderate flood. Also a couple scattered throughout central Kentucky as well. And that's all just from all the rain that we had still running through from the January 1st event. So now we're going to go look at the year in review. First, we're going to look at temperatures. And overall, if you look at the map, you see temperature-wise, we were pretty much close to normal for temperatures. Overall, for the state, we're about 0.7 degrees above normal for the year. However, that doesn't really tell the story. If you look below that and you look at that graph, it breaks it down month by month, and you can see we had some extreme months in there that just kind of bounced themselves out. So February of last year, we had, it was very cold, if you remember. We were almost 6 degrees below normal for the month of February. And if you go to what I just talked about, December, where we were almost 9 degrees above normal. So it was a year of extremes, but they all kind of bounced out. We ended up being almost just a slightly above normal for the year. So, and that was pretty much statewide, as you can see from the map. Look at precipitation. It was a wet year for the state. On average, we finished with 53.47 inches for 2021. And that ranks as the 23rd wettest year on record. That's going back to, I believe, 1895. So definitely a wet year. We finished 3.09 inches above normal. But if you look at the map on the right top there is the departure from normal. And you can see that there are places there in central Kentucky, Fayette, Clark County area, among others, where we are over 20 inches above normal for the year. So that's a lot for a year. But pretty much everybody was at least normal or above normal. There's a few places, Union, Henderson County, that were just slightly below normal, and a couple places down in southeast Kentucky as well. But overall, everybody was normal to well above normal for the year. And here, breaking it down month by month, you can see pretty much every month, with the exception of 3 months, we were above normal for precipitation. We had that dry period back in April, May, where we were kind of worried about a drought developing. We don't like to see below normal precipitation during our wettest months of the year. That can get us into trouble come summer if that continued, but luckily it's not the case. And we ended up having a pretty wet summer. I believe it was the 10th wettest summer for all of Kentucky. So again, a wet year, and because of that, no drought, which always makes me happy. We also, last month, you remember we were talking about November being the first time we really can remember there not being any severe weather reports for the entire month. Well, unfortunately, we kind of jinxed ourselves saying that, and December made up for that. So it was a very active month. But as you can see here from the plots, from 2000 till now, it was still the lowest month by about 70 reports from the next lowest year. So actually those aren't in order, or are they? No, they're not, but it's still about this. Actually, yeah, that's 70th. There was about 70 reports below normal. So, or not below normal, below the next lowest year. So, pretty impressive. Even with that crazy month of December, that we are still the lowest amount of severe weather reports for any year since 2000. And then looking at all the reports, last month it was complete a blank map, and this month that's probably the most cluttered map that I've seen since we started doing these over the past year, 2 years. So, and you can see the two lines of concentrated reports running up, and that's where the two supercells ran through from the tornado outbreak earlier in the year. And also you can see a lot of wind damage and flooding reports there in southern Kentucky, and that is from the January 1st event, and probably also the other event as well. We also had a tornado up in Scott and Franklin County as well earlier in December. So again, a very, very busy month, and we're going to talk some more about that. First, looking at these, this is showing the number of thunderstorm warnings issued per month, and also tornado warnings issued per month for all of Kentucky. And if you look at the thunderstorm reports for December, it was high, but not the highest. 2015, we had 50, which, if you remember, that was the warmest month on record. So no coincidence there. Also, I believe that 2013, we also had 41 severe weather reports. That kind of matches up with what we saw this year. However, if you look at the bottom and you look at tornadoes, 52 tornado warnings, and there is nothing even close to that in December or even November, October. Really, that's something you only see in the spring. It just crazy having that many tornado warnings, that many tornadoes in December, or anytime outside of March, April, May. So it was a very extreme event, very historic event, something that's just probably hopefully never see in December again, or really anytime. But yeah, very, very rare to see something like that in this time of year. So talking about the severe weather events, like I said, December 6th, we had 2 confirmed EF1 tornadoes. One was in Franklin County, one was in Scott County. The one in Scott County actually hit a trailer park and stamping ground, and there were some injuries with that. And that was all associated just with a squall line, just spin up tornado. And then December 10th and 11th, we had that historic tornado outbreak. There were 20 confirmed tornadoes, resulting unfortunately in 76 fatalities. And we also had a fatality in Franklin County from somebody driving into a flooded road. And then again, New Year's Day, we had another 10 confirmed tornadoes. So just a very active weather, lots of tornadoes, something we don't like seeing. And you can see here on the left, that is the supercell that just before it hit Mayfield, and just a classic supercell. And you can see the inflow and then the debris ball in the center there where the tornado was. Talking more about the December 10th and 11th event, like I said, there were 20 confirmed tornadoes ranging from EF0 to EF4. And most of those came from 2 supercells. We had the supercell that went through Mayfield and Princeton and Brennan that ended up making it all the way up to it lifted just a few hundred yards from the Rough River Dam State Park Resort. So that's where it lifted, just barely missed that facility. And that supercell added up, dropping 2 more tornadoes in Hardin and Spencer County. and the warnings went all the way to Scott County. So that cell had a tornado signature starting in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that tornadic signature made it all the way to Scott County, Kentucky. And that tornado that went through Mayfield, that was on the ground for 165.7 miles, which was the longest in Kentucky on record. And I believe I saw that it was the 9th longest in US history, but I wasn't able to confirm that. But it just an impressive tornado. It almost was the longest tornado on the ground on record. There was a small break in northern Tennessee where the tornado lifted and then came back down again. So just a few miles that kept it from being the longest tornado on record. And you can see, we also had that second supercell that came through, and instead of having a continuous tornado, it tended to have multiple tornadoes. It was a whole family of tornadoes all originating from the same storm. And that started in Tennessee, moved up through Fort Campbell, and then went through Bowling Green and all the way up into the Madison County area and close to Richmond. And then there was a third supercell that produced just an EF0 tornado in Monroe County. That was a weaker storm that came out of Tennessee. We did have 2 mesonet stations that got hit by tornadoes. That is pretty incredible to have just one. I believe Oklahoma mesonet had one a few years back that got clipped by a tornado, but that's, storm chasers go all the time trying to put stuff down in front of tornadoes to get measurements and rarely succeed. So to have 2 stationary mesonet stations get hit by the same tornado is pretty impressive. The Graves County station recorded a wind speed of 107.1 miles per hour, which would be a Kentucky mesonet record. The Caldwell County station also got hit, and you saw from the picture that it did not survive. It had a wind speed of 75 miles per hour before it went down. However, there is also a 2-meter high anemometer that recorded 120 mile per hour wind gust. So that is, and that has been verified. So that is pretty incredible to catch that with a mesonet station. Here's a map of all the wind gusts from that day. Like I said, you can see the 107 mile per hour wind speed, and this is just showing the ones from the 10-meter wind speed. So that's why for Caldwell County, you only see the 75 mile per hour wind speed. Hopkins County, we had one 82 mile per hour. Bowling Green, 75. Hart County, a 74 mile per hour. So some, and all those were along the two supercells that came through that recorded all those wind speeds. And this is from the Graves County mesonet station. We said it got hit by the tornado just before it moved into Mayfield. And not only did it catch the wind speeds there, but you can also see the pressure drop that came with those winds. A pretty substantial drop associated with the tornado is something that's really impressive to see. So I'm sure the meteorological world's going to be really excited about seeing that data. It's impressive to see something like that. And the wind speed, I should note, is measured in meters per second and not miles per hour. I said it was 107 miles per hour, not 28 miles per hour. But just some of the cool data that we were able to get with these stations. And like I said, that is the remains of the mesonet station in Caldwell County. You can see just below the graph there, that is the anemometer that survived and had the 120.1 mile per hour wind speed. And that graph there shows the wind speeds that they picked up, the orange being the 10-meter one and the blue being the 2-meter one. And you can see the orange one got to 75 miles per hour. And then after that, they were all just zeros. And that's because it was laying on the ground. But the other one, the 2-meter one, was able to survive and continue to record data. And obviously that station is out of commission for the time being. And you can see the piece of plywood that got wedged into the sign there. And that gauge in Caldwell County is just south of Princeton. It's at the UK Agriculture Education Outreach and Education Center in Princeton. And you can see that is on the farm just across the street from the main building there. And you can see the main building, which was just expanded as part of a new, I believe it was a crop and foliage center, research center that they had just got money for and just finished that expansion. I know Kentucky Farm Bureau was a big sponsor for that. And the building was a complete and total loss. I've been down there multiple times. I went to grad school at UK and was down there quite a bit. So it's kind of hard seeing that building just completely destroyed. That upper right corner picture, the barn you see in the distance, it was located at that foundation there. The tornado hit the barn and moved it. And the barn actually, you see, remained pretty much intact, which is pretty amazing. And the bottom right, one of the many UK vehicles that were destroyed. I know that they lost combines and other tractors and other farm equipment as well. So that's an important part of the ag community down in Western Kentucky. They do a lot of outreach and a lot of work with farmers and stuff. And they have a field day every 2 years down there. So it's a big loss to the ag community down there. But the UK has already said they're going to rebuild. And so that is a good thing. So luckily nobody was in the building at the time. There were no injuries, no fatalities at that center. So that is something to be thankful for. So now looking ahead, here is the QPF for the next 7 days. This includes the snow we're seeing today, and also we're going to have another event, I believe, over the weekend. And so you can see we are looking inch or more, especially Southern Kentucky might see closer to 2 inches of precipitation over the next 7 days. So the wet pattern will continue. Looking at the 6 to 10 day outlooks, temperature wise, we look to be kind of in between the warm and cold. So Western Kentucky might be a little above normal. Eastern Kentucky might be a little below normal, but excuse me. But all in all, we should hopefully be close to normal during that time period. And it also looks like we might have a slightly higher probability of being below normal precipitation, which after last week and this coming week, we might need. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, again, a slightly higher probability of being above normal temperatures in the western half of the state, and near normal here in the central and eastern part of the state. And precipitation wise, near normal, higher chances of higher precipitation down in southern US and lower precipitation up in the Great Lakes area. Looking at the monthly outlook for January, no real strong signals for our area. We have equal chances, higher chances of being warmer in the south, higher chances of being below normal up in the northern tier of the US. So, and being January, equal chance means that we could be both, or it could be either one. So, and most likely we'll see. Right now it's going to be a cold week, and I'm sure we'll rebound. So it'll probably be back and forth, because just like you saw in the temperatures for last year, nothing's ever normal. It's usually one extreme or the other, and they end up bouncing each other out. And precipitation wise, we are looking for higher than normal chances for above normal precipitation for the month of January. And then looking at the seasonal outlook, which is January through March, we have a decent probability of being above normal for the next 3 months, and above normal precipitation. And what that is taking into account is the La Nina. That is the classic La Nina setup, being a warmer temperatures in the south, and then the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes being above normal precipitation. So when the Climate Prediction Center was making this, they were leaning heavily on the La Nina setup and what we usually see with that. And speaking of La Nina, that is still, we still do have a slight La Nina out in the Pacific Ocean, and you can see that weather pattern. Again, drier, warmer in the south, wetter over the Ohio Valley, and then colder up in the Pacific Northwest and northern tier of the U.S. Stream flows, the average mean daily stream flow outlook for January. And you see a lot of that is normal to above normal, which is no surprise considering how much precipitation we have had, and there's more coming, and that the streams are already high. And if we look out into the seasonal flood outlook for this is for January through March, and not surprising, we see a flood risk for minor flooding and moderate flooding. The minor flooding being the orange, then there being a moderate risk for, or being a risk for moderate flooding of the red squares. So you can see that in the upper Kentucky River area, and then also the Green River, especially the lower Green River area. So something to keep an eye on, that they're predicting for flooding, something we're already seeing, and we could see more of as we go through the next few months. Fire risk, we do not have any fire risk, not surprising there. You do see it where the Carolinas, where we were talking about there still being some drought, and also out in the Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas area, where we saw the deepening drought earlier in the presentation. We were talking about the deepening drought. So in summary, it was a very warm December for Kentucky, and a very active month for Kentucky. For 2021, it ended up being a wet year with average temperatures, though really it was a very extreme temperature for the month or for the year. It just ended up bouncing out at the end of the year. So we had a historic tornado outbreak last month, and at the very beginning of January as well. And even though we had the fewest severe weather reports since 2000 last year. Looking ahead into January, the rest of January, really no clear signal for temperatures, and above normal precipitation isn't anticipated. And we do have a higher than normal higher flood risk going into this winter into the spring. So it's something to keep an eye on. So that is all for this presentation. The next presentation, like I said, is going to be February 3rd, and I believe it is Megan's turn next month. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Megan to see if there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Chip, for the wonderful summary of everything that has happened. It has definitely been a very busy month for everybody. So at this time, we'll go ahead and open the floor to anyone who wants to unmute and ask a question, or feel free to type something into the chat and we can answer it. So I'll give just a few minutes for that.
Megan, this is Steve Coleman. Can I just simply ask a question of the group?
Absolutely.
Just particularly for you, Megan, maybe specifically, what are the plans to reestablish the 2 mesonet sites?
Well, with regard to the mesonet stations, we only actually lost one. The Graves County station is fine, even though it got the 107-mile-an-hour gust. The Princeton County station was compromised, and we may set up a temporary mini tower there just to keep the continuity of our data set. But the full tower, I'm not entirely sure when it will be back and installed. There's a lot of, as you know, supply chain issues across the board, and that includes the metal for the towers, the microchips for the sensors, and all of that. So we have to review what we have on hand and then check and see what works with the base that we have there and all of those little things. But hopefully soon. I'm hoping before the growing season starts, because I know the farm relies on our station a lot for the data. So hopefully soon.
Thank you, Megan, and just keep us informed and however we can support the efforts. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any other questions? All right, well, with that, I will go ahead and thank Chip again for his wonderful presentation. And as he mentioned, I am slotted for the February 3rd webinar. So I will look forward to talking to you then. Hopefully we have a very boring January compared to December. But at the same time, you know, it gives us something to talk about. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with any of us. The emails are listed here, and you can reply to the email that gets sent out as the reminder for the webinar. So with that, I will hope everybody can enjoy their snow day and be safe. Thank you.